So I'm Emily Plater, and I am a counsellor specialising in men's mental health.
Tell me what entrepreneurship means to you.
Yeah, it's been an interesting question to ask myself, like the last year really, maybe even less, 9 months. I think it means freedom. It means being able to do things at a pace that works for me, where I can ramp up or ramp down depending on what I need. It means being able to explore and be outside of a conventional box, where I set the rules and I state what I'm offering, and people can take or leave that in a way that is not, doesn't have the same feel for me when I'm employed by an organisation where they set the rules and the parameters and the timings and the expectations. Entrepreneurship, being able to offer what I feel I can and what I've done training for, but in a way that works for me, that feels authentic. Yeah.
Perfect. But what experiences did you have with convention employment, being neurodivergent?
Yeah, I mean, maybe as we've talked about before, this idea of being neurodivergent is only a recent thing for me. And I have struggled in the world of work, honestly, for most of my working life, and just felt there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't doing it right. This is things like, well, it's a whole mixture of things. Dyslexia means that lots of written work and policies and wording, both other people's wording and my own, has felt like a bit more of a struggle than my colleagues or my peers. And also just, attention, honestly. One of my first jobs was as a waitress when I was about 15, and my manager would regularly ask me if I was in love. He was like, "You're just staring out into space, Emily, are you in love?" And so on a weekly basis he would say, "Are you in love again? Are you in love again?" And luckily that was quite playful, but then, as you age and there's time limits and there's things that need to get done and you're supposed to be being productive, that became more and more of a problem, and more of a sense of, I'm getting a vibe from other people, I'm not doing this as I should be, but I don't know what I could be doing differently. This is just how I am. And, settled for a lot of low-paid jobs, honestly, because of the fear that the more expectation and pressure there was, the more I would have a feeling of failure or not be able to meet those expectations. And leaving jobs a lot, Honestly, my CV history is, I've had to cut a lot of things out because I change jobs a lot, because nothing feels like the right fit, both for what I need, but also having the sense that I am what the employer had in mind. That's a kind of broad view. I've struggled and haven't quite found the formula, and I think entrepreneurship might be it. Yeah.
How you deal with the fear of uncertainty, being a neurodivergent entrepreneur, and do you have that fear? Do you have the fear of just not succeeding or doing?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, like many people, I live with a kind of a sense of fear, like every day. I think, lots of people have that fear and don't talk about it in a way that's helpful. But I think that fear will be there either way. And I'm realising, having talked to other entrepreneurs and been around other entrepreneurs, that courage is like a really key ingredient. You know, you have to feel the fear and do it anyway, or whatever that phrase is, because that's when you feel the most alive, is when you are, doing what you love, and it has risks, and maybe people won't love what you do, or maybe you will be judged, but at least you're out in the world, you're trying it. I think that's the point I've got to, where I'm not willing to stay small anymore and be in low-paid jobs and environments that don't work for me, with demands that don't fit what I can offer. So, yeah, I feel the fear, trust me, but the excitement is greater at the moment. Yeah.
And again, let's hear a bit about the biggest challenges you've faced, or you think you'll face, being a neurodivergent entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think challenges are things like my own self-judgment and criticism. You know, I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're getting less feedback potentially than when you're in a work environment, with someone else paying and setting the parameters. Challenges like knowing when enough is enough. Like, there's always more to do. There's always, you set your timings. You don't necessarily leave the office at the end of the day switching off. There's always more work to be done, more marketing, more, all of that. So knowing where the switch off is. And I think I said before, the aloneness, like, it can be quite isolating, or can feel quite isolated if you're on your own and don't have a team. So that's the importance of groups like yours, to get together with others.
And now let's flip this on its head. Tell me, the biggest strengths you have being a neurodiverse entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love this question. I might write down some of these answers, because there are so many strengths, and I think I said before, I have dwelled on some of what I've seen as weaknesses, but there's a level of adaptability that I have, that I think comes from my brain working differently and having to adapt in different situations and not feeling fully comfortable. I do kind of have to assess in a different way, I think, to people who can relax into things. And strengths like thinking outside the box, having creative thinking that's not necessarily linear or obvious. I think, as I said, I don't necessarily have a creative mind from an artistic perspective. My drawing is shocking. But as far as ideas, I think sometimes in a group, I bring an idea that no one else has thought of, or that is slightly on the edge. But it brings a new perspective, and I think all groups need that, and I think work needs that, and it can bring a freshness. So they're what comes to mind first.
Tell me, how do you cope being, have you experienced and coped being in a society that certain places, certain attitudes denies or dismisses your neurodivergence?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good question, and I'm so glad this is being discussed now. And as I said, this is a fairly new realisation for me, that now I can kind of look at criteria on a page and see how much I fit. Feels so validating but also strange. It helps a lot of things make more sense as far as what I've struggled with. But where am I going with this? I think, I think we continue to live in a world where, just the very term neurotypical means that there's this assumption that a whole section of the population are typical and normal, and then there is like a subsection of us who are abnormal, which I just don't think is the case. It's also interesting to think about like diagnoses and how helpful that is, and spectrums, to what extent are we on a spectrum of different disorders. Again, a really unhelpful term. I'm not really sure where I was going with this or what the question was, but I think we've got a long way to go when it comes to celebration of neurodivergence and adaptions in workplaces, so that the best of people can come to the forefront, so that people can be celebrated and given a break from the pressures of feeling like they're not doing it properly, like we're not doing it properly. So we relax on terms like, I'm thinking of things like being labelled as lazy or having a bad work ethic, or not paying attention, as if it's that easy. It's an on-off switch, like I'm choosing not to pay attention. I think it's a much more complex thing than people realise. So luckily awareness is growing and there are courses and it's being talked about more, but
Tell me about your personal experience. So tell me a bit about your personal experience, about how you've explained your own brain and how it's different to others. When we have a lot of time, and something I've experienced a lot is everybody's a little bit neurodivergent. What's your experience with explaining to people, and how have you coped with trying to get people to understand?
Yeah, good question. And I've got a long way to go, honestly, with being less apologetic about it, and feeling like and kind of dumbing it down a little bit. I want to have more strength to what I'm saying when I'm explaining to people, and yet that also there's another place my brain goes to. Well, I shouldn't have to explain. Like, we shouldn't have to come into a room and declare that we have dyslexia and ADHD, so that people can be less harsh about how we are in a room. But yeah, I try with my most recent manager, I've explained that I will need a little bit longer to read something, that it is helpful to have software that reads things for me, for example, that sometimes my emails might seem quite blunt or just factual, and that I'm much better at talking in person and explaining something in person. That I will need lots of breaks, and that's not because I'm lazy, that's because unless I'm hyper-focused on something, I will just need to get up and move. That's part of a coping strategy that I have. Things like that, I guess, are coming to mind. And feedback, I really need clear feedback and clear instruction in a way that maybe some of my colleagues don't. And I need to know what's a priority. Sometimes I'm not very good at gauging what a priority is. I need to have quite clear guidelines. And that's me, that different people have different needs, but it's what I'm realising I need in my current situation. Yeah.
This is an interesting question. Something I've been debating over a lot, and my opinion has changed over time. In your opinion, is neurodiversity a superpower?
Oh, yeah. Do you know, it depends on the day that you ask me. Today, I feel like it is, because I feel rested to an extent. I've eaten well, I've got flexibility in my day, and I feel like I can be productive today. But there are days where I'm not, I haven't had what I need, and there's time pressure, and I'm freaking out and having rejection sensitivity, and it absolutely does not feel like a superpower on those days. So, yeah, sorry that's not a very clear answer, but I go in waves with that question. I think it can be. I think it absolutely can be with the right conditions. But when I personally don't have the right conditions, it's pretty hard work. Yeah.
And also, I'm going to talk about something that's quite divisive over us being wired differently. There are certain ways we can get support, but we have to agree or we have to use labels to qualify us for support.
Indeed.
So would you identify with being disabled?
This is a really important question, and it's something that really got me when I first was looking into this, where I had an assessment had some testing with a clinical psychologist. And in a way it's very comforting, because I think, I do struggle more than peers that I have met. And it's helpful to have somebody say, yes, you do need some extra support, and we will gladly give that. But other days, I really... I don't know, I reject that idea. But from a personal perspective, it's helpful. My partner is profoundly deaf and has a cochlear implant, so he has a disability that's quite obvious and clear to people, both because you can see his cochlear, and there are things that he needs. He needs people to look at him. He needs to be able to lip read. He needs subtitles for films, and I don't think anything of that. That's just who he is and what he needs. So if I can have him as my model, as a really, dignified, interesting person who has some additional needs, I would gladly give that to him. So I think it's okay to require different things. Just less obvious for some of us for whom this is about our brain, which no one can see. So that's my initial thought about that.
And what would you like to see change in our society? Say, let's imagine 50 years in the future, we're having this chat again in 50 years. What attitudes to neurodivergent individuals and and thoughts and actions would you have liked to see become normal, become commonplace?
Yeah. I think, the first thing that's coming to mind is just clarity with each other about what we need in a really unapologetic way. To say when I first meet someone in a work environment, in a friendship, in a new potentially romantic relationship, to know ourselves enough, and for it to be acceptable enough to say, this is how I work and I need certain things for me to be at my best. To be able to say to a manager when you first start maybe an employed job, I will be the best employee if I have this and this and this. And for the response not to be, well, I don't know if we can give you regular breaks. That's just not how it works here. I think for anyone, whether you're neurodivergent or not, to be able to state your needs is it's empowering, but it's also, it gets the best out of people. We're not machines. We don't work like that. So, I'm sure I'd have a bigger response given more time. But for it just to be normalised. Even the word neurodivergent, I'm excited about more fun ways of expressing that, like NeuroSpicy, like I'm sure there will be more to come that are just a bit more validating. That's all I've got.
I can do a bit of reflective ones just to wrap up now. So
Lovely, yeah.
If I ask you what you'd like to feel about being a NeuroSpicy entrepreneur 1 year from now, look back at the year and the progress you'll make in understanding yourself, understanding how you work in pleasure, in business, what do you want to feel a year from now?
Oh, lovely. That's such a hopeful question.
Feel, know, be.
Yeah.
Any of the three of those.
Yeah, I think. I would like to feel more. Just kind of confident and grounded, confident in what I can bring, and that what I am bringing has value, and people, getting feedback that people are willing to pay for that, and that brings value to other people, and is communicated in a way that works for them, because that's a fear I have, that it makes sense in my head, but when it comes out my mouth, does it make sense to other people? Confidence. Network. I'd love to have a network of people that I feel comfortable to kind of share ups and downs with, to get advice from. And I guess, the knowing myself bit, again, just getting deeper into what I need and what helps me be, a good to myself, a good partner, a good friend, a good entrepreneur. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then last one. Someone's watching this who's neurodivergent, maybe wants to run their business or is running a business right now. What message would you want to share with that person?
I would say, so that if they're already running the business, I would say keep going, learn what works for you, surround yourself with people who are encouraging in a realistic way, who can give good advice from experience or just from an empathetic place, and get more understanding about your own brain and how you work. It's kind of always evolving, you know, there's always more to add. But that's been my journey so far, is just getting to know or learning about ADHD, dyslexia, and being kinder to myself in that journey, quieting that voice that's been growing for most of my life. It's not helpful, so that's my take on it so far.